You must remember this, a kiss is still a kiss, a sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when two lovers woo, they still say I love you, on that you can rely. No matter what the future brings as time goes by.
It's truly a pleasure to have with me today Walt Adams. I've known Walt for a long time, and Walt was in broadcasting, I think, a long time before that. Walt, thanks for coming over and talking with me.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Bob.
Let's start off with some of your personal background. Where were you born, raised, and that kind of thing?
Okay. Well, I was born in Greenville, North Carolina, and raised in Portsmouth, Virginia. My father worked in the naval shipyard in Portsmouth, and we moved there from North Carolina for that reason. And after graduating from high school, I went into the Air Force, and after the Air Force, came out and went to work in New York City.
Now, you said you were born in North Carolina.
Right.
But I don't detect any kind of a Southern accent.
Well, when I got into radio when I was in high school, sophomore year of high school, I was writing papers, term papers, essays, whatnot, for various classmates.
And this is in Norfolk.
This is in Portsmouth. Yeah.
Portsmouth, yeah.
Yeah, and I had a little system set up so ostensibly I wouldn't give the same paper to the same person in the same class. And at one point my system failed me, and two guys in the same class, my English class as it were, wound up with verbatim copies of the same essay which they turned in. That, of course, aroused the suspicions of the English teacher.
Now, did you? So you actually created these papers then?
Yes, actually, I did the research, and one night I did the writing. I taught myself to type, and I was paid $2.50 per paper.
And you were
100 words or 150 words or whatever.
And you were a sophomore in high school at this time.
Exactly.
Wow.
And I was found out. My little scheme, scam, whatever you prefer to use, was discovered. I was called down to the principal's office along with my English teacher, and he's, why did you do it? For the money. That was it.
And you said you were making
$2.50 per paper.
Per paper.
And I was doing maybe 10, 15 papers a month.
Whoa!
So I was in hog heaven at that point. And he said, why haven't you looked for part-time work? I said, I haven't found anything. He said, well, here's your punishment. You're going to have to write 2 papers a week, and you have to get up in front of the class and deliver it. And secondly, if you're interested in a part-time job, a friend of mine is program director of a radio station in Norfolk, Virginia, across the river, and would you be interested? I said, well, sure. So I had 2 weeks to prepare, and I wrote a number of my own essays, and I figured, being the smarty pants that I was, I would do it in style, like a newscaster. So I started listening to the radio and imitating. I'd get up in a mirror in the bathroom, and I'd read from the newspaper, and I'd put on what I call my radio voice, In the news today in Portsmouth, police said, sort of a Ron Radio type thing at the time. Well, I went over, my English teacher set up an appointment, I went over, I did the interview, I read some commercials, I read some news copy, I wrote some copy, I did weather forecast, and it was at the end, don't call us, we'll call you. I got home, I forgot about it. A couple of weeks later, I came home from school, and my mother said, the program director called, Jack Atkins. I said, what did he want? He said, well, he wants you to call him back. So I called him back. He said, are you still interested in that part-time job? And I said, yeah. So, okay, you can start tomorrow.
Great.
Be here at 10 o'clock. Okay. So the next Saturday morning, I was there at 9:30, and the disc jockey was getting ready to go on the air, and he was showing me around. Jack was showing me around and whatnot. So I didn't really do anything. They had the announcer in one room in the booth, and then the board on the other side. Well, I just sat there and monitored levels, basically. I didn't say anything,
Maybe
didn't have to say
inserted
anything.
some commercials or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I had to put tapes on the machine and that sort of thing. And about 3 weeks after I was there, the guy got angry for something, had a hissy fit, and take this job and shove it type thing, and out he goes. Well, there's dead air, and well, I didn't know what
You're
to
sitting
do.
there.
Yeah, I'm sitting there. I didn't know what to do. So finally, I had been watching them, and the guy had shown me, several things to do. So I turned on the microphone and found a record, put it on the turntable, and said, "Here's so-and-so," whomever it was, and went in and got some more records, got them ready, and looked over the log and got the commercials lined up, and then that was it. About a half hour after doing that, I got a call from first the station owner and then the program director. "What are you doing on the air?" I said, "Well, so-and-so had a fit and got up, and he's gone. He quit." He said, "Well, do you want to keep on doing what you're doing?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Well, okay, you get a raise, and you're now the weekend midday guy."
But you get to be the announcer and run the board.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so they save money.
Exactly. I got to do both. And at that time, when I did that, after about a month of being on the air, I found out two important lessons. One, people would pay me to sit there in a room by myself and talk, and second, girls listen to the radio.
Oh, there you go.
So it was broadcasting from that point on for me.
What station was this?
This was WCMS in Norfolk. It's a country station.
Yeah, they're still on the air.
I would imagine they are. I haven't been down there in so long. They may probably have changed ownership, been bought up by a corporate entity or something like that.
So you were there then for what, a year or two?
A year and a half. Yeah. And then I went to WNOR in Norfolk, which was a top 40 station at the time, and stayed there until I got out of high school.
So you were jock there too then?
Yeah.
Oh, you were still in high school?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I did that the latter part of my junior year and my entire senior year. Oh. And then got out and went into the Air Force.
Wow. And okay, what was the station in Norfolk?
Yeah, WNOR.
Okay. So then you graduated from high school, went to the Air Force.
Right.
And what did you study in the Air Force?
Well, I was assigned as an air police security guard on the flight line next to the base was in Suffolk County Air Force Base on Long Island. And we were in Air Defense Command base, which means we had fighter interceptor aircraft there. And I was, my duty was on the flight line, right at the alert hangars, what they call. Planes could be in the air within 5 minutes of an alert call. And when they came out of those hangars, they were screaming full tilt, and you were maybe 10 feet from them. And they didn't give you Mickey Mouse ears or any earplugs at that time.
Oh, when was this?
This was in 1960 to 1963.
Oh, okay. So we weren't in Vietnam, or
no,
this was peacetime.
No, I tried to get over there.
You wanted to go to Vietnam?
I wanted to get out of Suffolk County Air Force Base any way I could. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's now a municipal airport.
Okay. So then you came out of the Air Force,
right,
and decided to go back into radio. Was that it?
Well, actually, I had met my wife while I was in the Air Force, my future wife, and I was dating her and got out of the Air Force and said,
No, she was from there also?
She was from Flushing, New York. And I got a rooming house room near her mother's house, and went to work in New York City in various and sundry jobs. And finally, I landed a job at ABC Radio in the Radio News Network.
Oh.
So I was basically a copy person, where I would, they'd tell me to take the copy up to studio so-and-so and give it to whatever newscaster was on. I went up one day, and the editor said, here, take this copy up to John Cameron Swayze.
Oh.
He's in Studio X. Why? Well, I'd watched John Cameron Swayze when I was a kid on the Camel Caravan. And so I go up and I looked into a couple of studios. They were empty, and finally I looked in this one, and there's a little old man in there with a kind of a cardigan sweater on and a fedora hat pushed down low, and he's got pince-nez glasses, and he's reading something. He said, can I help you? I said, I'm looking for John Cameron Swayze. He said, I'm John Cameron Swayze. Oh my God. So he is. So that was pretty unique. And then from there I went to United Press International Radio Division. They had a specific radio division. We would cover all kinds of stories for radio on tape and do feature pieces and whatnot.
So you were out on the street then gathering news?
I would do street reporting. I covered the United Nations and New York City politics, a lot of anti-war demonstrations. Vietnam was going on at the time. And everything from theater openings to movie premieres, you name it.
So they just say, hey, Walt, we want you to go here or here or here.
Exactly. You know, so-and-so's going to be in town. We want you to cover. I covered the Pope's visit, the first papal visit to the United States.
Oh.
I would go down to Washington, D.C. occasionally for fill-in type things, and I interviewed Gerald Ford, Everett Dirksen, Lyndon Johnson, a lot of politicians, tons of politicians. I covered Capitol Hill, I covered the Pentagon, the White House.
So you're with ABC in New York.
Right. And moved to UPI Radio.
Okay, and went UPI Radio.
Right.
Okay. How did you get to this market?
Well,
so now you were with UPI Radio in New York.
Yes, and they were having in the process of having what they called a hold down, which was an economic backing off layoffs and whatnot, money saving venture, downsizing. And I was one of the last to be hired for the audio division, so I was expecting to be canned, not canned, but laid off. And
there's a difference in that.
Yeah, there's a big difference, as I found out many times. But my wife's sister lived in Deposit, Windsor area at the time. And I had some time off during the week. She had some time off. We would come up to visit, bring her mother up here. Her mother was in New York City to visit her sister. Well, they were coming into Binghamton one afternoon to go shopping. And I said, my brother-in-law was a dairy farmer, Ronnie Conklin. And they were coming into Binghamton to go shopping. They said, what are you going to do? Well, I didn't want to stay out in Windsor and watch you milk cows. I said, well, I'll come in with you. I've never been to Binghamton per se. So I came in, and as we came in, we passed WINR radio and TV studios, which was on Henry Street above the Goodyear Tire Center at that time. So they said, well, we're in Binghamton. What are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I'm going to go in there and get a job. Oh, okay, fine. We'll meet you back here. Let
me interrupt and say, what year was this?
This was in 1967.
Okay.
So when in, Bob Julian was the program director. I asked to speak to the program director. He came out. We introduced ourselves, and he said, "Are you are interested in doing news? We have an opening." I said, "Well, yeah." I gave him my background and had me fill out an application, and then it was go through the same, read the commercials, write some news. Do a weather report, yada, yada, yada. So he said, well, it would involve radio and television, and you'd have to do a radio shift in the evening. Would that be any problem? I said, oh, no, not at all. He said, well, when can you start? I said, well, there's a little problem. He said, what's that? I said, well, I haven't left UPI radio yet. He said, oh. He said, so what would you like to do? I said, well, I've got to go back, obviously. My wife, Judy, was having our first child at the time, and we had already made arrangements for her to have the baby down in New York, but we didn't want to raise kids there. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, I have to go back to New York, and, you know, there's this situation with UPI where possibly a layoff is in the offing. And he said, well, if you decide to change your mind, please give me a call. I said, yeah, I will, no problem. So we went back. At some point, Judy had the baby, and I came up here after I went back, and after she had the baby, I came up here. Bob Julian called, the program director at INR, the day the baby was born.
Oh.
And how's your wife doing? How's the baby? I told him the baby was born. Oh, good. When are you coming back up? I said, well, I'm still working at UPI. That afternoon, I go into work, and I get the notice of the layoff.
Uh-huh.
So I go, after I get off work, I go back to the hospital and tell Judy that, you know, I've been laid off, and what are you going to do? I've got this job in Binghamton. It's near your sister. She was leery about moving. And it wouldn't be like we're moving all the way to California or something.
Uh-huh.
You at least would know somebody in that area. So we talked it over some more, quite a bit, and decided, well, we'll give it a shot, see what happens. And I came up here for a while, and then I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. I was up here for a while, and then she had complications with the pregnancy, so I had to go back down. It was a potentially life-threatening situation. So I went back down, not with UPI, I was already working for INR, went to work for the Associated Press as a writer-reporter. And then the baby was born and whatnot, came back up here. A month after he came back up here, Bob said he would hold a job open, which he did. I came back up here and started working, and I figured, well, I'll work here for a couple of years and get some small market experience and then move on to a larger market, Well, I put down roots. I had 2 children at the shortly afterwards, and bought a house, and I've been here ever since.
So you started at INR radio
And television.
and television. So television was on the air at that time.
Right. It was owned by the Gannett Corporation at that time.
Right. That was before the sale then to Stainless.
Yes, right.
So what were your duties then in radio and television?
Well, I was a newscaster in the morning. I did the morning news on radio. In the evening, I did the stock report on camera. And in between time, I would go out and film stories, cover local events, politics, police beat, whatever happened to be going on, whatever was the assignment.
Who were some of the people you worked with at that time?
Oh, Don Webb, Gino Riccadelli, worked with Stan Hayes, Bob Cullings, Bob Dunn, Joe Kenny, Dwayne Marsters. Bruce Nelson was the news director at that time.
Oh.
So a number of guys.
Right. And so you did you do then news also on television?
No, just the stock report.
Just the stock report.
Just the stock report. And it was a head and shoulder shot, what I call a shampoo shot. And I was at a podium, and Don Webb, who did the weather at the time, he did the weather, and then I would come on with the stock report. Well, he would come over to the desk and out of sight, put his head on the desk and just look up and give a big grin, and I would last about maybe 5 seconds, and I would lose it.
So you're like the shot like this.
Yeah,
right?
And the podium was
and now, and so Don was anchoring the news at that time, or
he did the weather. Bruce Nelson was the news anchor, and he did the weather. Bob Cullings did the sports, and I did the stock report.
Wow. So then, what happened then? You stayed at INR for a number of years?
I stayed at INR, I think, for about almost 3 years, and then I got an offer to go over as news director to WENE AM radio. News was still a viable option in the market and in radio in general.
And what year would that be then?
That would be probably 1971. I know it was just prior to Watergate in 72.
Okay. And where was ENE located at that time?
It was on Main Street in Endwell, across from the old Endicott Johnson headquarters building.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it was next to a church.
Yeah, that's where ENE started, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, ENE and MRV.
How many did you have on your news staff at that time?
I had 3 people, myself and 2 others. Steve Craig was one of the people who came to work in news at ENE. It was one of his first jobs, I believe.
He was young then.
Yeah, he was.
He's not young anymore.
Yeah,
is he?
no. Well, none of us are really. But,
so who were some of the others then?
Alan Kent, Guy Nichols was on the air.
Yeah, he was a morning man over there, wasn't he?
ENE
was a big station there, wasn't it? I mean, as far as ratings and popularity and that kind of.
Doug Tract was morning man for quite a while.
Grease man,
yeah. Then they had Charlie Brown.
I don't remember.
Yeah, he was there. Guy Nichols did afternoons. Norm Sherwood was
Jolly Green Giant.
Sherwood. Come on, he wouldn't get his mic quite open before he said Sherwood. He was the midday guy, and Andy Hubble was the general manager at the time.
Now, was WMRV on the air at that time?
No, it came on the air about a year after I started there.
So that would right around 1970 somewhere.
71, 72, somewhere around there.
Wow. And so that must have been pretty exciting over there too. What were some of the things you did in news over there?
Basically, it was make sure everything was taken care of, covered. In the morning you'd go in, you'd make the calls to the sheriff's departments and police departments and fire departments to make sure everything was...
Now, at that time, as I recall, rock stations had to have very short news.
Yes.
Right? Yes. How long was a newscast?
2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes.
Including the commercial?
Including the commercial.
Yeah. So they were, what, 10-second stories?
Pretty much so, yeah.
Yeah.
10, 15 seconds, you know, so-and-so was injured in an automobile accident on Day Hollow Road this afternoon. And that was it.
That's it. Well, as I recall, there's some stations also at that time, they even shortened the music.
Oh, yeah.
To make things go faster and faster and faster.
Yep. Back in the 50s and 60s, music was maybe 2.5 minutes tops length. And you would get some records that we called bathroom break records that were 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes. That when nature called, you would put one of those on and make a mad dash and hopefully get back before the record ended. But we would take, you'd get to some point in a record when it would be kind of repetitious or go into an instrumental bridge or something like that. And
now, at some point, well, so let's move on from there then.
Okay.
When so you left WENE at some point.
Yep.
What happened then?
Your guess is as good as mine. I probably at that time went to WNBF.
In news?
Yeah. And did more of that. Worked with Bernie Fiotti for a little while, if I'm not mistaken. And some of the guys over there. And eventually I wound up at pretty much every station in the market doing news. I worked for the Quiet Island, which is now WHWK. I did an afternoon DJ program on NBF on weekends, and whatnot. I worked mornings part-time with Ted Baer,
Oh,
and went to, let's see.
so you were Ted Baer's newsman at that time?
Yeah.
How was he? How was he to get along with?
He and I got along very well. I mean, he would throw barbs every now and then. I'd throw them right back at him. And we had a pretty good relationship.
Ted had quite a long career over at NBF, I believe, until he
Yes.
went over to ENE.
Yeah, had quite a long time here, and he was quick.
Yeah.
You know, you'd say something, and boom, he'd jump right on it with a quip or an observation or whatever. It's very funny.
Who were some of the other people over there at that time?
Let's see. I don't really know. John Dakalovich, I know, was there. He was a sales manager. He eventually went to WKOP. I went to WKOP. And
Oh, was that right?
yeah.
So you worked then for what, Andy Jarima?
No, I actually worked for Clark Cook.
So this is after the station then changed hands.
Yeah, yeah. Clark Cook owned it. Ray Ross was program director. John Dakalovich was sales manager, and I did morning news.
No, so this was then in the mid-'70s,
Yeah.
somewhere in that neighborhood?
Yeah, about there.
Okay.
Dave Benson was the morning man. And we had a thing called Waltz Time, which is dun 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 dun. He'd play a waltz record, and he said, "Now it's waltz time," and I'd come on the mic and say, "It's 9:25," and we'd do that bit every now and then.
Well, KOP was country at that time,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden there would be waltz.
Yeah, well, we did a promotion. I wound up going to middays on the air. Dave Frost.
What a voice that guy's got. Wow.
Man, Ray Ross called me, program director, one day. He said, "You got to hear this guy." And I'm home. I'm on the phone. He plays this tape. I said, "Good heavens to Betsy, where did you find that?"
Yeah.
"Oh, his name's Dave Frost, and he's here. He's looking for a job. I'm thinking of hiring him as news." By all means, do.
Yeah.
So he did, and I went to middays in the afternoon. And one of the funniest things I can remember with the KOP was we did a promotion with Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, where we gave away elephant poo.
Get out of here.
We did. Gave away elephant poo as a as a promotion. You know, it's gonna be great. It'll be a big hit. We're giving away elephant.
Oh, God.
It worked out quite well. We got a lot of attention.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah.
You had a lot of entries in this contest?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We couldn't get enough of the stuff. They were bringing us their daily output. People loved it. Wanted it for the gardens. Yeah. It was,
Who was behind that promotion? Doc Alovich or Ray Ross?
Yeah. I think we were sitting there. I think it was my idea, but I don't know if I can really take credit for it. All I remember is we were sitting around talking about doing a promotion with Ringling Brothers, and somebody mentioned, well, you know, they do give away elephant fertilizer. Well, you know, why not? Let's do that. Well, how are we going to do it where we can, you know, get it across and not get in trouble for it? Okay. So I came up with the jingle, the promotion copy, and here's how to enter. It's great for your garden.
Oh, great. Well, so now you're at KOP,
Right.
and then at some point
Went back to E&E.
you went back to ENE.
Right. And, well, actually, excuse me, when I went back to E&E, I was at KOP, and one of the salespeople, Gary Lippitz, decided he had been offered a job at WENE. And again, I was on the air in middays, and he comes out into the hallway. The offices were on the other side of the wall. He comes out into the hallway by the studio, heading out the door. I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to E&E. I just resigned." Oh, okay. Well, have fun. Well, John Dakalovich happened to come out into the hallway there. I was at the soda machine. I turned to Doc. I said, I want his job. He said, you got it. I don't, whoa, what am I
That's
doing?
fast, right?
Yeah, so it was 4 hours. The next 4 hours were spent on the phone with my wife, Judy, talking with Doc Alavich, Clark Cook, Ray Ross, on the phone with Judy, back to Clark, back to John, on the phone. Finally, I decided to go into sales.
Uh-huh.
And it was a good move. I was very fortunate because I had written and produced and voiced a lot of commercials.
Uh-huh.
And I would go out and see something, a billboard or a newspaper ad,
Uh-huh.
and get an idea for a commercial. It was funny. I did fairly well with it.
Who were some of your accounts?
Oh,
Now, WKOP was in the Weeks and Dickinson building at that time?
no,
or-
they were over on State Street at that time, across from Kmart Plaza,
Uh-huh. Okay.
and we were we were over there. It was nice studios. They're a little small, but adequate.
Okay. Now, who were some of the accounts there? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, I had O'Shea Auto Parts. I had Collins Farm Supply up in Green. I had Don's Automotive Mall, Dare As You Pull It. A number of them. Too many to.
No.
Every time one came available, I'd grab it.
Now, Walt, you and I have talked over the years. You didn't mention anything now today about photography.
Right.
Now, you were with UPI or Associated Press, or how did you get into the photographic end?
Well, I'd always liked taking pictures. I don't know, whatever reason, I could say I appreciate beauty or uniqueness or whatever, but I like playing around with a camera and seeing what I could do with it. And eventually, I went to the New York Institute of Photography
Really?
part-time at evenings.
Now, at what point in time was this?
This was when I was working with UPI Audio.
Uh-huh.
About 1963, 64.
So while you were with the UPI Audio Radio, you decided then to go into the picture area.
Yeah, I got interested in photography again, and took the course at New York Institute of Photography, and I had a 4x5 speed graphic camera, like you see in the old 1930s and 40s movies with the big flash bulbs going off and whatnot, the reporters, photographers. And I would haul it around, and if I ran across, a fire or accident or something like that, I'd snap off a couple of shots. They had a film pack, which you would put in the back of the camera, and then you would pull out the block, I called it. And then as you took a picture, you would pull another one out, and you had about 10 4x5 negatives in there. And I would sell them either to the Daily News or the New York Post or UPI.
So this is like when you're out on the street then for
Right.
Associated Press or UPI, I guess
Yeah,
it was.
UPI.
And so if you see something going on,
Right.
so you probably had news conferences or things like
Oh,
that,
yeah.
or was it mainly active things like fires or
Well, it was
accidents?
both.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd go to a lot of news conferences. Robert Kennedy was senator at the time. I covered him a lot. Both
So you
in-
took pictures then too?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Him in Washington. I got pictures of Martin Luther King. I had pictures myself with George Romney, the governor of Michigan, who was Mitt Romney's father.
Have you kept those pictures?
I had, when we moved up here, I had them all in a box. I had a lot of souvenirs. I had autographed albums by the Beatles, photographs of the Beatles, all autographed, that I covered their first visit to New York. their press conferences in the Pan Am building and at the JFK and wherever they were. And I had all this memorabilia in a couple of boxes. And when we moved up here, a moving company had it in storage. When we moved up, somehow or another, those boxes didn't get moved. I do still have the press pass from the Pope's visit, some other memorabilia off and on.
Now, you told me this story sometime in the past, and maybe you'd like to share it again, that I understand that at some point you had an assignment to cover the vice president's trip in visiting New York, right?
Hubert Humphrey. Yeah, and I have no proof of this, and I've said this before. There is no existing proof of it in government records that I'm aware of. I've tried to find it. The vice president was speaking at B'nai B'rith convention in New York, and I was assigned to cover for the audio division. Well, we were set up on a balcony, and I had my camera with me, and I got a phone call, and it was UPI wire service asking if I had my camera. I said, yeah. He said, well, our photographer was supposed to get over there, but apparently he's been involved in a minor accident and is going to be tied up. Could you take a couple of backup shots of the vice president when he comes in as he's speaking? I said, sure. So the guy from Reuters news service was next to me with his recorder. I asked him would he turn on mine when the vice president started speaking. He said, yeah. So I went downstairs to the main floor, and there was the doorway, the hallway, the wall to the left, and the doorway, and then the dais stretched quite away from the left side of the room, the entrance. And there were reporters and photographers lined up along the front of the dais. And I'm standing there, I've got my camera, and one of the guys I had known from one of the other news media happened to see me. I hadn't seen him in quite a while. Hey, Walt, what are you doing down here? I got to shoot the vice president. Well, it's not a term you use among high-level politicians.
Right.
It's a term photographers use all the time.
Right.
I'm going to shoot a picture of this. I'm going to shoot a picture. You do not use that around the Secret Service. I had a tablecloth thrown over me. I was knocked to the ground. A gun stuck in my ear, and I could hear the hammer being cocked back, and said in no uncertain, very impolite terms, not to move a muscle, they would blow my, head off. I was handcuffed, taken upstairs. I had no idea. I could see flashes, like flash bulbs going off, and hear a commotion. And they hustled me out of the room into an elevator, and from there I have no idea. I was fingerprinted, photographed, strip searched, held incommunicado. I couldn't make a phone call, couldn't call anybody. Somehow or another, my boss at UPI Audio got wind of it. He called Roger Tatarian, who was the head of UPI overall, and they amassed a squadron of lawyers and showed up at the Waldorf demanding to see me. Now, I had my legitimate press pass, credentials. I'd been vetted by the FBI and everybody as a legitimate reporter, and they got me out of there. My camera was smashed. I never got it back.
Really?
There was never a word in the paper about it, never a word on television, never a word on radio, nothing. Wow. It never happened. Wow. And it still has never happened, according to those that be. So it either didn't happen, or they refused to acknowledge.
You knew it happened.
Yeah, I know what happened, yeah. Right. And it's no fun having a gun stuck in your ear and like...
And did you get your camera back?
No.
No?
No. It was broken.
Was it? Oh.
It was smashed.
And there's nobody you could complain to, I guess.
I tried. I called the Secret Service. The lawyers called the Secret Service. They called everybody they could
They
think
had no
of.
record of it, huh?
We don't know what you're talking
Oh,
about.
God. Oh, wow. Now, one other story that you shared with me over the years was you're a pilot, right?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, I'd always been interested in flying. When I was a kid, I was a member of the Civil Air Patrol in Portsmouth, and we would go out to the airport and camp out and whatnot. And they had a little L3 Cub type, Viper Cub type aircraft, and every once in a while we would get fortunate and be taken for a ride. And one of the guys that was one of the pilots, I liked to tipple a bit, and we'd get up and fly around, and especially on cold days. And he'd have a couple of nips and say, "You want to fly?" Sure. Okay, you got it. I'd fly around. He taught me how. And I loved it. I thought it was great. So I something I always wanted to do. And finally, at one point, I decided I'm going to do it. My wife was fully supportive. So I started taking lessons at Tri-Cities Airport with Miller Aviation. Cliff Dean was the instructor. And it took me a year, but I finally got my license in 1976. And so I could fly a Cessna 172 or 150, whatever.
Now, as I recall, one time when I went up with you, you were a member of a club.
Yeah, there was AMVET's post 664, I think. It was an AMVET's flying club, the only one in the country, by the way, based out of Tri-Cities Airport. And you could rent planes at that time, including the fuel, $35 an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and a Cessna 172 has 4 seats, 4-place. So you get up, fly around pretty good.
Now, I'd like you to share another story.
Sure.
And this has to do with wait a minute. I just lost my microphone. I can't ask the question, Walt, until I plug my mic back in. Okay. I shouldn't get excited about asking this question. Well, this question now involves your photographic abilities and your pilot skills, okay? You know what I'm talking about now.
Yeah.
Well, how about telling that story?
Well, in order to get some flying time in and have somebody else pay for it, I started doing aerial photography for local realtors and whatnot. And I got an assignment to take some aerial shots of what's now the Home Depot Plaza in Westover. So it was a Sunday afternoon.
But at that time, it was Grandway, right?
Yeah.
So we're going back about 30 years here, 40 years, yeah?
At least, yeah.
Okay.
So I went out to the airport, got the keys, got in the plane, set it up, took off, and got over the area. Well, I would do just a brief circle around just to get the feel for the lay of the land and when I was going to shoot. And I had the camera strap around my neck. So I got the airplane in about a 30-degree bank, and the window's open, and I'm looking down, and I get into position and click, 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 various things, and all of a sudden I hit my own turbulence. Well, the plane starts bouncing around a little bit. Well, I let go of the camera and grab the controls, the yoke, to stop the oscillation and whatnot. And all of a sudden I feel something going across the back of my neck, and before I could do anything, I noticed the camera and strap heading down. It fell about 3,000 feet into the asphalt parking lot, and there it remained. So I flew back to Tri-Cities, landed, got in the car, and drove back over and retrieved what was left of my Nikon camera. Yeah.
You and cameras don't seem to get along too well.
No, they seem to have it in for me.
Did the
somehow.
pictures turn out?
No.
No?
I had to go do it again. Unfortunately, I had a little bit of leeway. They didn't need the pictures immediately.
What other stories do you have like that, Walt?
Oh,
You've seen so much over the
yeah,
years.
I've been very fortunate. When I was with United Press International, I got to meet so many people. I don't know, Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy and people from history that you wouldn't ordinarily get a chance to meet. And I was fortunate in being able to do that. And I found that if I talked to them in a civil, tone politely, then they would respond in the same. And I got to fly with the Blue Angels Navy flight demonstration team.
Wow.
In 1966, they were doing an air show at Grumman Field on Long Island, and they had sent around a letter to all of the news media personnel that they have 10 demonstration rides available in their, they were flying Grumman Tigers at the time. And if you were interested, fill out the form, send it back. Well, I was lucky enough to be one of the 10.
Right.
Oh, what a ride that was.
Yeah.
We went over Long Island Sound and went through all the maneuvers. And there was a little airstrip on the Connecticut side. And from altitude, probably 20,000 feet, it looked like a piece of electrical tape on a pool table. Well, the pilot said, "You want to have some fun?" I said, "Sure, love
Sure.
to." So he made a blind radio call, request permission to do an inverted flyby at the municipal airport. They called back and said, gave him permission, there's no traffic in the area. So he lined the plane up and we started to dive. And I mean a dive, not a little descent, I mean a dive. I don't know, it seems like we were about from here to the ceiling above the strip at the end of it. He rolled the plane over, went down the landing strip, and it was gone. And then we start spiraling up. I thought I was going to lose my lunch. Well, what a ride that was. That was a big thrill. And I was made an honorary Blue Angel for the occasion.
Wow.
I have the nice little plaque in my office
great.
and whatnot.
Now, Walt, you're still busy, right? You're still doing things with your,
Oh, yeah.
you have a little advertising agency, right?
Yeah.
How long have you had that?
Oh, since 1994.
Uh-huh.
Actually, that's when I got out of broadcasting, per se. I have Don's Automotive Mall as an account, Manicoke Gardens, and a few others here and there. They come and go.
Well, Don's and Gary's, I guess, they're recyclers.
Yes.
And you were involved in recycling.
I was, for 12 years, I was the contract executive director of the Automotive Recyclers Association of New York. And they were very actively involved in the International Automotive Recyclers Association based out of Washington, D.C. And I would take care of their membership, their renewals, promotions. They were having conventions and meetings for the state association. I would handle the arrangements for that, the details, and then I was very heavily involved in the affiliate chapters portion of the International Association.
Yeah.
So we were lucky. I got to travel all over the country with conventions and whatnot.
If there's somebody watching now, some kid that thinks he'd like to go into broadcasting, what would be your advice?
Go to school, get an education, get a degree. Get a degree in anything, as long as you have a degree. If you're willing to, it's like the starving artists, if you're willing to start out in a small market for next to nothing, you can make something of yourself. It's going to take work, it's going to take moving. I had an opportunity, in fact, to go back to work for United Press International Audio as the bureau chief for New York. The money was very, very attractive, and I love news. I love the excitement of it, the unpredictability of it. But then I started thinking, well, if I go back, yeah, I'll be making all this money, but I'll have an hour commute at the minimum to and from work. News doesn't stop at 5 o'clock. It doesn't start at 9 o'clock. It can happen anytime, anywhere. In fact, when I was working for them, I had a portable tape recorder, reel-to-reel, that I kept at home. I would get calls from correspondents in Berlin, Rome, Saigon, Paris, London, you name it, all over the world, all hours of the day and night, especially the night, with stories that they were feeding in. So it's not something that that you can really count on for any kind of a normal life in terms of if you're a reporter. But you need the small market experience, and you need that what I call the suffrage period in order to gain the experience and knowledge. I was very fortunate in that not only with United Press International, but with ABC and the Associated Press, I worked with very, very talented people as writers who would give me pointers on how to write. I remember I wrote a story for the Associated Press that was to go on the radio wire about Jacqueline Onassis. And it said, had something to do with, I had put in there, it was about her publicity. Whether she was publicity shy or not. And I had put in there that she appeared to be very amenable to publicity, not in those words.
Well,
I turned the copy into the editor, and he handed me my hand and the head and told me, "You're editorializing. You do not do that at the Associated Press. I don't ever want to see that again."
Oh.
So it was very cut and
That's
dry.
true. There was an opinion, wasn't it?
Exactly. And it's something that you don't want to get into that trap.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in my opinion, there's a lot of that today.
Oh, today?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. They do, like in the newspaper, they do put bylines in there.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess it's okay to have an opinion if your name's on it.
Yeah, if you're a columnist, you can have all the opinion you want, but if you're a reporter, opinions don't belong in a news story. It's the old dragnet Jack Webb, just the facts man.
There you go.
And we had to have, when I was in news, especially in New York and for the AP and UPI and ABC, you had to have three persons, reliable persons, attribute a story. You had to have a name, whether you could use that name for attribution on the air or in the copy was another matter. And you had to honor embargoes, which were, this is a hold for, do not release this information until such and such a time. And you had to honor all those things, and you had, when you had a story, especially if you were doing an investigative piece, you had to have your facts straight and your sources in line.
So they had a whole handbook.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Associated Press particularly had what they call a style book, which was a list of words and phrases you could not use or were not encouraged to use.
What kind of pressure do you suppose, like the wire service reporters are under today, when everybody wants to have the news on the air immediately? And there have been times when people have come out with news stories and then had to retract it.
Well, that's been the case with newspapers as well. There was a well-known story about 10, 15 years ago where this reporter was doing a feature series on a poor child, a poverty-stricken child who had been abusing drugs and whatnot. That turned out to be totally false. And this person had won a Pulitzer Prize, national award.
That was a New York Times reporter.
Right, that was a New York Times reporter, and the truth came out that it was all totally
made up
fiction.
Yeah.
And of course the award was withdrawn.
But there must be tremendous pressure.
There is. There's got to be.
You got to be first, but you've got to be right.
Right. Being right isn't necessarily a criteria any longer. I know it sounds funny and it sounds cynical, but it's very true. You don't have to to be factual. You can, and they do it in Washington all the time. You operate on a rumor or a innuendo or whatever. You don't. Everybody has their sources, not for publication.
Right.
You know, they're deep background sources. But other than that, you used to be, and it's not. Unfortunately, it's not like that anymore. Which is why I'm glad I'm not in it any longer, because I don't know if I could tolerate the laxity of, you know, of the whole situation.
Well, I think we've covered the topic here, Walt. Did you have any final comments you'd like to make?
Well, I appreciate you having me on your show and giving me the opportunity to vent to some degree. There were a lot of stories that, you know, small, large, that are available. Everybody has them that's been in the business. It's not a normal business by any stretch of the imagination. I always said I never worked a day in my life, because if you go to work and you have fun doing what you're doing, then it's not work.
Right.
So I've been very fortunate. My wife has been very supportive. We now have, we raised 4 kids here. We have 8 grandchildren. Fortunately, they're all within 25 miles. And I'm very satisfied with how my life has gone, and I still maintain contact with some of the people in the business, such as yourself, and on Facebook. I run into them every now and then, and sometimes we disagree somewhat vehemently on political issues mostly. But it's good. It's good to stay in touch, and it's a good business. I would not try to discourage anyone from following their dream, if that in fact is what it is.
Well, Walt, I want to thank you for sharing your broadcast life with us.
My pleasure.
And I wish you good luck in the future.
I thank you very
Especially
much.
fishing, right?
Absolutely. Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right.
Good fishing is on the way.
There you go. Thanks, Walt.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
You must remember this, a kiss is still a kiss, a sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when 2 lovers woo, they still say I love you, on that you can rely. No matter what the future brings as time goes by.